Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers with Tricia Flanagan here at Campaign for America. We are coming to you live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Zoom, and on Twitter. And we hope to add a few more social media platforms as we move along. In fact, the way things are going, Tricia, we're probably going to have to add more to replace the ones we're going to be completely banned from at this point. So we're getting ready, right, Trish?
We are. We're planning for all eventualities. I mean, between the two of us, you and I have probably lost over 30,000 followers on Twitter alone. Censorship from big tech is in full force, but we are ready. We're ready with a preemptive plan, and we look forward to staying connected with all America and around the world.
And look they could try to censor us all they want. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to give up, and we're not going away. But the irony of all of that we're seeing taking place with regard to the Democrat, Socialist, Communists moving that agenda that will truly hurt this country, because certainly they're not standing on the Constitution. When they are through with us, the Communists and Socialists will go after the enablers, which is the Democrat Party of the United States of America. So listen, they're not going to win. We're going to survive, though. Believe me, folks, we're going to survive because we're American patriots. We stand on the holy word of God, and we stand on the Constitution of the United States. And I'll tell you, Tricia, I take comfort in that. I really do. I know people are depressed and distressed, and we've talked to many of them who are really, really down about what's going on. But we must seize this as an opportunity. God bless the President of the United States, Donald Trump, for breaking the back of establishment politics and positioning America, again, at his peril, to see what's been going on for decades in this country with career politicians. I give him an A+ for that.
Oh, absolutely. He has stood up for our rights, for our values, for our Constitution. We applaud him for that, and we stand with him on that platform and that foundation. And we stand on the word of God, right? He has promised us that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. We are relying on our American grit and our ingenuity, and we will get through this, and we will never abandon our president. He needs us now more than ever.
Now, we have a request from the president to all of you who are viewing and listening. It's a request that he did send out, I would now say nationally, and we support this request. He has made it very, very clear for people, good American patriots who support the Constitution of the United States, not to get involved in any violent acts, not to get involved in any violent protest. If you go to a peaceful protest and all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of a violent act, go home. Do not become part of any of that. Because, folks, more and more evidence is coming out that the people that protested in Washington, D.C., the overwhelming majority of those people are good Americans. They didn't get involved in any fights. They didn't get involved in assaulting the police. But the people who did get involved in assaulting the police and did get involved in breaking into the Capitol building had nothing to do with the soccer moms and the janitors and the what we call grassroots Americans who went there to peacefully protest and live by what the Constitution says and exercise their right to assemble. Now, that's not to say that there were some of the supporters of the president who got caught up in this and let their emotion run away with them and break into the Capitol. They should go to jail. They should be charged. Patricia, I understand you also found out something very startling regarding what was supposed to be the arrest of one of the people who were taken into custody by the police.
Yes, I mean, as we find out more and more about who was arrested, it now looks like there are over 70 people who have been arrested, and amongst those that were taken in for questioning was a Black Lives Matter activist named John Sullivan. He is out of the state of Utah, and the DC Metropolitan Police had brought him in for questioning, but released him. And so that's an issue that we are looking to resolution on. Apparently, the DC police have not issued any messages or any response to why they released him, but there are newspapers out of Salt Lake City that reported as far back as July that this activist John Sullivan had been arrested for inciting violence previously. And again, he was a Black Lives Matter activist who was taken into custody while he was in the Capitol. So that's some breaking information. And, we look for answers to those very important questions.
And we're going to try to find out why. Why wasn't this person arrested? Now, they might say, well, he didn't commit an act of violence. No, that isn't the point. You broke into the United States Capitol. You participated in what you call sedation, treason, and all types of descriptions of what these people were doing. And I happen to agree with you, okay? Meaning you, the Democrat socialist, that these individuals who broke in to disturb and to destroy our democracy. I have no argument with that. But I've got to tell you something. They are not the people that went there to peacefully protest. They are not the people who truly stand with the president on the foundation called the Constitution of the United States. Those people did go home. Those people were in the background. And anybody who got involved in an act of violence should be arrested. So why is it that this individual, who they probably thought, Tricia, we would not find out, was not arrested? Because to me, if you're inside the Capitol at that time, why are you in there? You're in there to cause some mischief, to commit a further criminal act, because it was a criminal act to begin with, breaking into the Capitol building. So there you go, folks. We're going to be following that up as we move along. But you need to know that, and we've always said, when we report to you, we have the facts. Let me give you some more facts. Most of us saw the Dog and Pony Show today on our TV networks. It was the United States House of Representatives for hours and hours and hours bashing President Trump. He's this, he's that, he's the bad guy, he caused the problem. Well, the fact of the matter is this, and we've got some facts that we'll share with you. Number one, there's not enough votes to convict him. There's not enough votes in the Senate. I don't believe for 1 minute the Senate is going to convict him. That's number one. Number two, Mitch McConnell. This guy, I got to tell you, I hate to use words that, describe people in a certain way, but I've got to tell you, folks, I don't like to use the word coward much, but this I've got to use. It's a coward who says publicly, well, I'm going to vote against or I'm going to vote for impeachment. And then a few hours ago, he said, well, I'm thinking about this now. Don't know what I'm going to do. And now we find out that he's not going to convene the Senate until the 19th, Tricia, the day before the inauguration. I mean, this guy is waffling all over the place. In addition to that, we have a guy named Moyers, Representative Moyers. I'm going to talk about him in a minute, who also made a very, very damning speech against the president. He's a Democrat. So what does the Democrat bashing the president have in common with the Republican McConnell have in common? What do those two guys have in common? Here it is, folks. You ready? They are in Congress 4 or 5 decades. They are the career establishment politicians that we have been talking about that need to be removed from office. They will not be removed from office until we, the people, mandate term limits on every single person who gets elected to office. They've got the money, they've got the special interest, they've got the lobbyists, they've got all the players that one needs to get elected today. They don't have the people. And the reason why they don't have the people, they don't need us. And if they don't need us, they push us aside. And Tricia, I think that really tells a lot about, again, what President Donald Trump was able to expose as a result of what is all going on.
Yeah. We look even back to legacies like the Cheneys, even though, Liz Cheney, first of all, has been asked to step down as GOP chairwoman by Andy Biggs out of Arizona, as well as I think now 3 additional House of Representatives representatives have joined him. And when we look at the legacies that have been created by the establishment, I mean, Liz Cheney herself hasn't been there all that long, but she got there as a result of her father, Dick Cheney, being part of that deep-rooted establishment. So your point is so well taken of the term limits that have to be imposed to now take a different turn, because we're not just talking about an attack on our president. We're talking about an attack on the very fabric of our Constitution with what they have done today. What they've done in the House, they've weaponized and politicized impeachment. They didn't go to the Judiciary Committee and look at facts and evidence. They had a knee-jerk response to get this moved through as quickly as possible. And this is exactly what Alexander Hamilton warned us against in writings like the Federalist Papers, this kind of weaponization of impeachment. It should be a sober and deliberative act, and they've turned it into something that they can turn on our president. I blame the establishment swamp with the roots, exactly as you just talked about. The way we pull them up is to make sure we fight for term limits.
The Soviet Union Politburo used to put their representatives on trial right in the halls of the Kremlin, and the trial lasted 10 minutes. They would point their finger at an individual who was going against the agenda of the Communist Party. They would tell that person to stand up. They would accuse that person of sedition, of treason, whatever it is, against the Communist Party. And then, without giving that person the chance of defending themselves, they would declare them guilty. And then they would be escorted out of the Kremlin, not to be seen again. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, and I'm going to again insist that you Google this and look it up, we have members of the United States Congress right now who are Democrat socialists / communists who are suggesting that members of the United States Congress who stood up in defense of the President of the United States and we the people be removed from the United States Congress. Tricia, it's chilling, it's shocking. I've got to tell you, it's just mind-boggling to think that in our country, we would have elected representatives actually duplicate what the Soviet Politburo did, the Communist Party did to their representatives in the Soviet Union when that existed.
It is such a frighteningly dark day today when we see on the House floor, the People's House, the deliberation was not even fair. There was no evidentiary support presented. And, due process is enshrined in the 6th Amendment of our Constitution. Where was that right today for our president? There was a very powerful moment today during the hearings when one of the representatives from Florida stood up and took his time and talked about how our president has not been given this due process. And he asked a very powerful question. And he said, have we looked at what the insurrectionists, if that's what they were calling them today, those who were arrested and those who were responsible for this heinous act of violence that our president denounced even today in his remarks after 6 p.m. What this representative said was, have we looked at the evidence? Have we questioned those who were participating in this act of violence, why they did it? Do they blame the president? Has there been anyone interviewing them to see what was going on in their capacity as free agents and actors in this violence? And he said, I will wait. And he used the remainder of his time on the floor to just listen in silence. And at the end, he said, I guess there's no evidence then. That is the point that we've come to today with this rush to judgment by the Democrats.
And I'll tell you where there is evidence, Tricia. There's evidence that the United States Congress knew what was coming. They did nothing. The Capitol Police knew what was coming, and the chief of the Capitol Police at the time tried to get the National Guard a couple of days before the event took place. He was turned down. So there were enough people who knew, and they did nothing, absolutely nothing. So even I have a report here that Representative Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey, unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey, said that she witnessed some lawmakers leading people through the Capitol on January 5th. Now, this is the day before the protest, which she deemed reconnaissance prior to the violent siege that took place in Washington. Now, she's intimating that on January 5th, Republican lawmakers were taking people through the Capitol, and to her, in her view, it was a reconnaissance. When pressed by the press, when asked about, what do you mean by reconnaissance? How do you tell if someone is on a reconnaissance mission? She couldn't explain. She had no idea. But here's my point. If she felt that that truly was something that was a reconnaissance, why not go up and ask? Why not ask Capitol Security? Why not ask Capitol Police? Why not go to the congressional representatives that were taking these people through the Capitol. My guess is, as always, many groups go through the Capitol. Their congressional representatives take them on a tour. Maybe we're going to find out they were Girl Scouts selling Girl Scout cookies. You know, Congressman Sherrill, this is why, folks, these individuals that are now in the House of Representatives and some in the Senate, they're not just interested in destroying President Donald Trump. They're interested in destroying us, in destroying the country, in destroying the movement. And as I said today, and I said yesterday and the day before, and I'll say tomorrow, and as long as I'm able to be on the air, network television, I've got bad news for the Democrat socialists and good news for American patriots. Donald J. Trump is going nowhere, and neither are we. Now, let's talk about the charges against the president, specifically inciting violence. That's very key to this. They've charged him, among other things, with inciting violence. Well, if we're going to incite, or if they're going to charge the president of the United States with inciting violence, then somebody, and I hope somebody is listening, like some of you congressional representatives and aides who listen to our broadcast, I hope you have the courage to stand up and now officially charge Maxine Waters with what? Inciting violence. Lieutenant, how could you say something? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Right here, folks, right here. And I'm going to read it to you. I'll show it to you. You want a copy? We'll somehow get it to you right here. CNN of all stations, Tricia, CNN of all stations on June 25th, 2018 had a report, and this was CNN's headline, and then I'll read it to you. I like to read it to you because then I can't be told by someone, well, you're interpreting what they said. So I'm going to share with you what CNN put in their report. Headline, Maxine Waters encourages supporters to harass Trump administration officials. Representative Maxine Waters called on her supporters to publicly confront and harass members of the Trump administration in response to the zero tolerance policy at the border. Now, here's what she said. See, I was very curious as to what were her words. That's important, right? We know the president's words were, I know you're going to march down to the Capitol, march peaceably and go home. Those were his words. There's no interpretation there other than what he said, correct? Of course, everybody's saying he said a lot of other things, but those were his words. Well, let's read what Maxine said, all right? And this leads to the point of why she should be charged with inciting violence. This is what Maxine said. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create absolutely insane and remarkable. It's a little cloudy here. You create a lot of havoc. Get into their faces and do what you must do to make sure that they know that they are not welcomed in America, that they should not be here. This is Maxine Waters, okay? This is what she said. And the fact of the matter is that I'm going to go back to House Majority Whip Stanley Hoyer. He's the guy I was talking about earlier that had it in common with McConnell. Hoyer, who blasted the president today, called him every name under the sun. A guy that's a traitor, treason. I mean, he just goes on and on and on, right? Well, his remarks regarding Waters' comments was this: I disagree with her. That was his remarks. Tricia, isn't that inciting violence? She says that, here's what she exactly said, all right, with regard to the last part. She said, get into a crowd, make yourself into a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they are not welcome here anymore, anywhere. Now, look this is the United States of America. And I remember in 2018, at that time, people were reporting, those were people that were supporting the president, MAGA hats, and very proud of the president and of our country. They were reporting that they were being harassed, that they were being bullied. Some of them were being assaulted. Well, did not Maxine Waters tell them to do that? Tricia, can't we do what they are doing to the president and suggest that this is what she said? The thing is, we have the evidence. So my question is this: why not our congressional representatives? Why are they not taking stuff like we have found and throwing it in their face and shoving it down their throat?
I wish you had been on the congressional floor today with that exact quote, because that would have been something that, in her own words, could be delivered as evidence. Cory Booker said very similar things. He said things like, get up in their face. That's on video. Now, let's look at that and compare and contrast it to what President Trump has said and what he hasn't said. Now, by that I mean that, these congressional representatives and Senator Booker, they have said actively, calling for violence in their own words, and they also have not denounced it. So they are saying one thing and they're not saying that it's wrong. Well, compare that to what the president has said. And again, he reiterated that in his statement tonight, that these people who were committing violent acts and who breached the Capitol, they are not President Trump supporters. Anyone who is in support of this movement is not violent. And he has denounced the violence time and again, as we have. And he has also not said anything about violence or encouraging insurrection. No one can find it in his own words. He's spoken about peace and about standing down and about doing the right thing. Compare that to what these representatives and what Senator Booker has said, and you have something that is actually, in my opinion, impeachable, because we have to hold Congress to the same standard as they're holding the president to today.
And it seems as if the only Republican leader who called Maxine Waters out on June 25th, 2018, right here, folks, he said this: she has just called for harm to supporters, of which there are many, of the Make America Great Again movement. The key is she called to harm these people. And you know who that leader was? His name is Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Again, he had the courage to stand up. And then CNN goes on and reports that her comments were criticized by some Republicans, but Democrats were very reluctant to criticize her. Why? Because she is a very, very popular person among progressives and a longtime member of Congress. A very, very popular person among progressives, socialists, communist supporters of a communist agenda. They don't eat their own like the Republicans do. That's a fact, folks, and we'll get to that in a minute. They circle the wagons, they protect them, and then they come after us. So now, I just said the word Republican, right? Well, there was a Republican who did kind of push back on her, and his name is Kevin McCarthy, who we heard from tonight. He said that her remarks were very dangerous and called upon Waters to issue a public apology. Well, I've got to tell you something, Mr. McCarthy. Look, you're supposed to be a friend of the president. You're supposed to be an individual who is to stand up very, very, very strong in support of him. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. But I've got a question for you, Representative McCarthy. If you are willing to get on the floor of Congress and even in one sentence criticize the President of the United States, why didn't you just say, you know what he did maybe wasn't right, or what he did, he could have used better words. So maybe what he needs to do is apologize, however you want to say it, but not go the full force in agreement with the nonsensical impeachment proceeding, which I don't believe the president needs to apologize to anybody. He doesn't need to do that. But I understand that, you're a politician and you got to say something to get yourself out of the corner. So why didn't you do that with the president and then say to Maxine Waters what you said about the president? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you demand? In fact, Representative McCarthy and other Republicans, why don't you all get together and introduce a resolution removing her from Congress? Hey, Tricia, this is evidence that this congressional representative incited violence, in my view. So the 2 points. Point one is what I just shared with you, that certainly there's evidence that she did that, and probably others did. But point two, I got to tell you, what type of emails I'm getting? And let me know if you're getting these emails and these messages, that if there's any party that is historically famous for committing political suicide because they destroy themselves, it's the Republican Party. And they don't have the guts, they don't have the courage, they just simply don't have the will. I'm not talking about grassroots Republicans. I'm talking about establishment Republicans not all of them. We've got guys like Jim Jordan. And by the way, folks, I wear not my jacket tonight in honor of Jim Jordan, because Jim Jordan, you know, he doesn't wear a jacket. But tonight, I specifically did two things. I did not wear a jacket in honor of him because that guy has stood the course. And I'm wearing my Captain America tie. See this, folks? Here's a symbol. I'm going to show it to you. My Captain America tie that was given to me by Nutley citizens, the leader of the Nutley Patriots organization, who is standing up on a grassroots neighborhood level, doing exactly what we ask Americans to do, to fight for this country. So my point is, Tricia, we need courageous people. We really do. We need them to run for office, and we need, as they're running for office, to run these career politicians out of town. And I'll tell you, term limits seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important point to underscore, that, you know, the GOP, as we know it, the establishment GOP, that's made up of the lukewarm Republicans who won't stand their ground. I mean, we definitely had some heroes today. Jim Jordan was one of them, as you mentioned. We had Matt Gaetz. We had Andy Biggs, who is calling for the resignation of Liz Cheney as GOP chairwoman. But those Republicans, those strong voices, are fewer and further between. And I think that that's part of what we're standing up for at Campaign for America, right? Is that we are making sure that we develop those voices, that we fight to get those voices in office, because that's how we're going to repair our Republican Party. I have deep roots in the GOP. My family, part of my family goes all the way back to the Party of Lincoln. I don't want to jump ship. I want to stay and fight. I want us to pull in the direction of the constitutional conservative platform. That's why we're fighting so hard. And it was on full display in Congress today why we need those voices so badly.
And wasn't not Kamala Harris, wasn't she the one that said something or suggested to go riot? Don't give up. I think there's a report out there that she's quoted as saying that. So I'm not going to confirm that, folks, until I see it myself. But I'll tell you, I believe, Tricia, I saw a report like that. Do you recall anything like that?
I do. And in fact, if you go to my Twitter feed at New Day for NJ, you will see, if you scroll down a few days prior, you'll see that I have a copy of that video on my Twitter feed. It was in an interview with Stephen Colbert, and she was talking about the rioting over the summer that President Trump denounced, that President Trump supporters denounced, but that she inflamed. And you can see her exact words in that video. And she said it won't stop before Election Day, and she said it won't stop after. That's part of the problem too.
Look at, folks, you're doing a great job. If some of you wonder what you can do to help us fight the evil of communism and socialism and to spread the word, many of you have done it based on what we're seeing, what I'm seeing right now on our newsfeed. Yesterday, as of this morning, 17,500 people viewed our broadcast. Last week's broadcast is topping 35,000. And this tells us that what you are doing is you are sharing. You're sharing all over the place. And now we're getting messages from people where they do want to have that discussion around their dining room table. They do want to be able to sit with their neighbors and form a strategy, a peaceful, lawful, effective strategy to do what must be done to rid of our country of these individuals that are truly looking to turn the halls of Congress into the halls of the Kremlin. We have great Americans in this country, and you are them. So we need to lower the temperature. We need to use our heads, and believe me, all of our hearts are in the right direction, but let us not mistake passion or turn passion into anger and anger into acts of violence. We don't want to do that. That's not us. What we want to do is be able to say to our children and grandchildren, look what we did. We not only talked about the Constitution of the United States, but we walked the Constitution of the United States. So let's go on to a couple of news items, folks. Listen to this one. I remember telling Natasha, I said, you know what, after Joe Biden becomes president, the virus is going to disappear. It's going to go away. They're not going to have any more virus. Well, that was confirmed to us by none other than Comrade Governor Cuomo of New York. He is now talking about opening the entire state, opening it all. Supermarkets, restaurants, dine inside till all you want. Go morning, noon, and night. have a great dinner. In fact, have a steak on the city of New York. The reason he said why he is taking that position now is that people have said that a lot of businesses have been hurt. It's been a year or so, right? Like he didn't know. His reason is that, well, there won't be any city to go back to once this is over. So now think about this, Tricia. Untold misery and suffering in that city. Small businessmen never to return. Broadway never to return. The Rockettes gone. The Christmas tree over there in Rockefeller Center, I don't think anybody visited it this year. Instead of a New Year's Eve celebration, it was a funeral march with de Blasio and his wife dancing to the tune of, I guess, the theme of The Godfather. But the fact of the matter is that Cuomo, the time, you see, look, I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory, folks, but I kind of believe that over a period of time, myself, and I know Tricia has, my wife has, knowing how politicians operate, that when they feel they have won, then they change the rules. So now, Governor Cuomo feels he has won, and now he's opening up the state. Tricia, is it a coincidence that Biden's in, President Trump will be leaving, and now all is hunky-dory because the virus is going to go simply move out of Manhattan?
Exactly. It's laughable in terms of the data that he actually takes into consideration and acts upon. And I think that it's a combination, like you said, of feeling like he has the victory in hand, but I also think he's feeling pressure from setting a record of an exodus from any state in our country's history. More people have moved out of New York and abandoned property and abandoned their businesses than any time in any other state in American history. So, I mean, I think that he is now waking up to the fact that his tax base is diminishing and that he's in real trouble economically as a result of this. And when I hearken back to even the World Health Organization, who is no fan of conservative values, had even said months ago that the economic harm that is being seen as a result of this COVID lockdown is going to be detrimental. He didn't listen then to his own liberal voices, but he's listening now because he's in the hot seat and he thinks he has a victory. The combination is, like you said, that's when Democrats act, when it's personal to them. They don't really care about we the people.
So they started with the taking away our right to worship. We know that's happened over this COVID crisis. But really began with the Second Amendment, and they're not done with that yet. The right to assemble kind of disappears now, but the right to free speech, the right to listen to what you want to listen to, is slowly disappearing. But the Democrats, Socialists, Communists are no doubt, folks, and I have an interesting report here, no doubt being thanked and praised by the Ayatollah of Iran and the Chinese Communist Party for ensuring that they are not taken off of the social media platforms in the United States of America. In fact, the left has not said a word at this point about you and me, the president, and conservatives throughout the country being removed from social media platforms. Now, if that doesn't really give you enough evidence that the Democrat, Socialist, Communist Party of America is not looking to destroy our Constitution, our freedoms in this country, I don't know what will convince you, because that's an absolute fact that Parler has been shut down. Conservatives have been removed from Twitter and Facebook, two of the platforms we're now broadcasting on. I would hope that they would not take us down, but they might, but we're prepared for that. But clearly, Tricia, an assault on free speech and an assault, or let's put it this way, an attempt for the state, and we've said this all along, to control not only what one says in America, but what one will be listening to.
Yes, yes. And this is one of the biggest foundational problems with what has happened is that, Twitter and the liberal big tech and social media are still lending a voice to people like the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran. And there are many, many posts that we can show you that call for basically death to America, death to Israel. There is violence they're a proponent of the violence that goes on in terms of being the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. That's a fact. That is something that mainstream media and the big tech are ignoring. And those voices coming out to silence conservatives while giving a platform to people who support Hamas and support these voices of terror, that right there it's in our face that they are part of the problem and not interested in protecting any American's right to free speech or any other constitutional right for that matter.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because this gets a little personal with me regarding the fact that I was in the United States military during the Iraq War, Operation Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, during those periods of time. My son, a United States Marine, fought in Fallujah. And I've got to tell you, folks, I can't begin to tell you the number of friends, the number of acquaintances, if you will, in the United States military who were killed by IEDs. And guess whose fingerprints were on the IEDs? The Ayatollahs, the Iranian government. And yet we have Democrats, socialists, communists in this country. We have social media platforms that seem to support these regimes who have killed your sons and daughters, who attempted to kill my son, who attempted to probably kill me, who attempted to kill every red-blooded American man and woman that put a uniform on to fight for this country and shed their blood for our freedom. And these cowards in Congress, these absolute yellow cowards, have the audacity not to raise one voice against Twitter, against Facebook, against these corporate cowards for allowing the Ayatollah, the Iranian government, and the communists, if you will, to just spew out their propaganda, remove us, we the people, and yet keep them up there. Therein lies the anger. Therein lies the hypocrisy. Therein lies the reason why these things should not cause us to be distressed, but should cause us to get strong and should empower and embolden us to hit and to strike back. And we can do that again, lawfully, legally, and within the framework of the Constitution. But Tricia, I'm glad you brought that up because they're using our money to destroy us. That's exactly what they're doing.
Well, they really are. And they're using that Section 230 protection to get around all of it. And look, they are government subsidized. Let's not forget that. And by virtue of that fact that they are getting our tax dollars and then slapping us in the face with censorship, it's just a double punch. And, you know, we're also victims of being guilty by association, meaning that anyone who is a conservative is being conflated with those who have stood for this violence that we've all condemned, that our president has condemned, that anyone who stands for America has condemned. And for them to put us all in the same bucket, but by the same token, then give license to these other voices that are speaking violence almost on a daily basis is beyond the pale.
So we're going to close tonight's broadcast with a very, very familiar, famous name. His name, Vladimir Putin. Could you imagine? Why would I want to bring up Vladimir Putin's name at the end of this broadcast? Because there's a bit of an irony taking place as you and I are meeting the challenges of trying to keep our freedoms, our free speech here in America. The irony is this: Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has signed into law a mandate to absolutely ban Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms from coming into their country if, get this now, folks, if Facebook, Twitter, and those social media companies deny the Russian people the right to free speech on those platforms. Vladimir Putin found a way to take them down. And that means if his country decides to block them, meaning the social media giants from broadcasting in their nation, the financial hit will be catastrophic. What a way to deal with something. Tricia, it's unbelievable. I also read a report. By the way, I have to give my wife credit for this. She did some research on some of these things. I also read a report that as American politicians of the communist socialist movement are trying to get people away from church, away from their houses of worship, keeping them from them, by the way, during this crisis. Again, it was Vladimir Putin who made it very, very clear that the Russian government, under his control, will respect the religion of Christianity in that country. Now, look, folks, I'm not saying that he's our best friend. I'll tell you, and I think, we go down the road the way that Joe Biden's going to handle things, we're going to have a lot of problems with Russia. I know we are. Historically, they're not our friends. President Trump, again, they try to paint a bad picture. He's in bed with Putin. He's whispering in Putin's ears, secret meetings with Putin. What President Donald J. Trump did was turn Hillary Clinton's reset button. Remember that? Oh, we're going to reset our relationship with Russia. Well, I got to tell you, when Vladimir Putin saw that reset button, he laughed. He stopped laughing when President Donald Trump threw out the reset button and changed it to a respect button, RESPECT. Vladimir Putin respected Donald Trump, President of the United States. My point is that under President Trump, some fear went through the bones of a lot of these leaders around the world, some fear, but at least they knew that they had to respect him. I fear what's going to happen with regard to our foreign policy when Joe Biden takes office, because last night or the night before, it began. Unknown to a lot of American citizens. In fact, you probably have not heard this and going to hear it for the first time. And those of you who are, news bugs and you like to surf the internet on foreign policies and certain other foreign affairs, I read a report where there was a bombing, several aerial bombings in Syria, compliments of the Israeli government. What I'm driving at, folks, is that we need to defend Israel. We need to stand strong and tall with the nation of Israel. And I believe, Tricia, what's so sad is that they may now be coming to the conclusion that maybe I should say when, I hope it's but when the Iranians finally build their nuclear weapons, compliments of the United States government under Joe Biden, that their lives, the life of their country, will be in serious jeopardy. So maybe they need to start now to take out the enemies that they perceive are going to try to take them out. I pray to God that the American people, I know the American people will stand with the nation of Israel. I pray to God there's enough sensible people in the United States Congress that will be able to say to the nation of Israel, don't worry, you stood by our side, now we're going to stand by your side. Ladies and gentlemen, yes. Thank you so much for joining us here on Campaign for America. We'll see you tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. And we have the pathway to victory. We do. All you got to do is email us, and you could mail at Rogers, FORAmerica.us. Mail, MAIL, at Rogers4America.us. We will send you a PDF document. We're still working on it, called Operation Red Storm Rising, how you, from your dining room table, could actually be empowered to make some significant impact on the direction our country is going in. And the way I look at it is, folks, I look at this as an opportunity to gather together again, to regroup, to work together, and to support President Trump when he goes back home to Florida, and to let him know that he's not alone, that he is not a man without a country. Why? Because we are the country. We, the people, are the country, and we're not going anywhere. Thanks so much. See you 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night here on Campaign for America. God bless you. God bless our country. Keep us all in prayer. And remember, what is the chief end of man? To love and to glorify God forever. And Tricia, why don't you close out with those two wonderful words? What are they?
More important than ever, let's roll.
I love it. Okay, take care. Good night.